Welcome back, everyone. I hope people found their way to the other cinemas, and the first session, after the first session was good, so the second session. So we are back here with Charity, and we initially talked about different topics that she could talk about here today, and I think especially in the, as a little bit as a counterpart to like of all the stuff that everyone is talking about these days with like AI augmentation. Everyone is a 10x developer now. We are all hyper productive. We settled on a talk on praising the normal engineers and why it's good to be just average. And maybe not everyone is as 10x as they might assume they are. But I would leave that to tell you to Charity. And thank you, Charity, for being here. And yeah, big applause for Charity.
I love that introduction. As I'm a born contrarian, I guess. So whenever the thing to be, I guess I just sort of reflexively turn the other way. But I actually would say it's not so much about not being amazing as it is redefining what it means to be amazing in a slightly different way. But let's talk about it. And if people start walking out, it will not offend me. For those of you who don't know me, I am the CTO of Honeycomb. We pioneered modern observability. I wrote the database reliability engineering book by O'Reilly, and the first edition of the observability engineering book. I am almost done with the second edition. I was supposed to be done last Friday. Before that, I was supposed to be done the 1st of October. Before that, I was supposed to be done in July. But I swear, I'm getting there. Writing a book is far too much like writing software. Your estimates never quite pan out. But I am excited about the second edition in a way that I wasn't excited about the first edition, and hopefully you guys will find it useful too. I have gotten to work with some incredible engineers over the course of my career. I worked at Linden Lab on Second Life. I worked at Parse, mobile backend as a service. We were acquired by Facebook. I would say I worked at Facebook somewhat non-consensually. I would not have chosen to work there, but I worked there. And there were a lot of great engineers there. I've also gotten to work with a lot of engineers who, they were early in their career when I worked with them, and they went on to become incredible engineers, just world-class engineers. And I feel like a lot of us here, most of us probably, have encountered a few engineers who just seem like next level, just like magicians compared to us mere mortals who are stumbling along in the code mines, right? Whether it's, they leap to these non-obvious yet elegant solutions, or they just emit just boundless waves of high-quality code. Some people just seem to be better than the rest of us. And I think that that's kind of why this 10x engineer meme has proven so durable, because it just feels right. It just feels right. It may be based on some very flimsy, shoddy research. The claims that people have made to defend it have often been hilarious. I don't know if you can read those, but this was the original thread that kicked off the whole 10x engineer flurry, and it's all about how they have dark backgrounds. They don't like to interview people. It's just some truly ridiculous shit. Oh, 10x engineers hate meetings. Their laptop screen background is typically black. They rarely look at documentation. Most 10x engineers are full stack engineers. I have rarely seen them doing UI work. Cute. Very cute. These are all ridiculous things to say. And a lot of them just blatantly double down on stereotypes, like, "Oh, I look for dudes who look like Mark Zuckerberg in a hoodie. I give him my money." I mean, I actually don't have a problem with the idea that there are some engineers that are 10 times better than the average. In fact, it is logically true insofar as plenty of us are 10 times as good as engineers who are just starting out. So logically, therefore, 10x engineers do exist. I don't have a problem with the idea that there are engineers who are 10x as productive as other engineers. I kind of hate the phrase because excellence is not generic. There is no one in the world who is 10x better than other engineers across the board. Excellence is incredibly specific. There are lots of people who can become a 10x engineer in what they do, which is, they do Ruby on Rails monoliths that are doing e-commerce. They're working on, like at the time that I wrote, the book on database reliability engineering, I was probably one of the best in the world at query profiling. Haven't done that shit in 10 years. I am definitely not a 10x engineer when it comes to that anymore, right? And so I just feel like it's not so much that there's anything wrong with the concept of 10x engineers as I don't think it's helpful. 10x engineer makes it sound like this 10x productivity is an immutable characteristic of a person. But it's actually just a temporary skill set. And secondly, and more importantly, so what? If you've ever met anyone who talks about themselves this way, they were probably an asshole. People who pride themselves on being 10x engineers are the kinds of people who go around creating tech debt for everyone else. They're so concerned with being so much faster and better than everyone else that they aren't good teammates. And in fact, individual engineers don't own software. Teams own software. Teams of engineers are what matter. The smallest unit of software delivery is the team, right? It doesn't actually matter so much how fast an individual engineer can write code. What matters is how swiftly, how effectively, how efficiently that team can collectively write, test, review, ship, maintain, refactor, extend, architect, and revise the software that they own. So much of this has less to do with individual achievement and more to do with the structure. If it takes the slowest engineer at your company to ship one line of code, it's going to take the fastest engineer at your company this exact same amount of time to ship one line of code. The sociotechnical structural systems govern, even before ChatGPT came out. The speed of writing code was not the limiting factor of excellence. Generating code is and always has been the easiest part of the software development cycle. That's only become more true in the age of AI. This is not, okay. We do have a term for individual engineers who own services on their own. And what do we call them? We call them single points of failure. Right? The team is the interface, the team is the API, spitting in my mic, interface that allows individuals to get sick, go on vacation. It allows for redundancy, right? Resiliency. It's quite normal at startups to have an individual who owns software, but if you're successful, you grow out of that. So being a great leader isn't about collecting the best individuals. It's about building great teams that work together and work together well. When people talk about world-class engineering teams, though, they tend to obsess over levels and pedigrees and reputations. I remember when Christine and I were out fundraising, we kept hearing founders who'd be like, "Our team is made up of all ex-Googlers." And Christine and I were like, we don't want to build a team of all ex-Googlers because then they're all going to build software like internal Google software, which Google can tell their engineers, you have to use this. We're building software that we want everyone in the world to use, right? When people talk about world-class engineering orgs, they tend to obsess over all the wrong things, which is a way of acting like the way people are is the way they always were and always will be. But people change, people grow. I think this is exactly backwards. I think the best World-class engineering orgs are the ones where normal engineers can do incredible work, where every day engineers with, whether they're junior or senior, with a normal amount of experience, with a normal amount of training, with a normal amount of skill, can show up and every day move the business materially forward. Where you don't have to be one of the best engineers in the world just to get things done. I actually feel like the definition of great engineering orgs where it's all about great individuals is a way of letting leaders off the hook for doing their jobs. If you just hire, the top 0.5% of engineers in the world and drop them in the deep end and make them just like scramble and try to find a way through, they might find a way through. But a truly great engineering org is one that is optimized for different things. It is optimized for learning, for speed, for velocity, for safety, for being able to make mistakes, and for it not to be fatal. This demands a lot more of your leadership. And when I say leaders, I don't just mean management chain, right? I think if you're a staff plus engineer, you are just as much a member of the leadership team as any engineering manager or director. But this is harder. It's easier to just drop people in the deep end. It's harder to build a sociotechnical system that supports greatness. It is, however, a massive competitive advantage if you can draw from a broader talent pool. Is it cutting off? No, it isn't. This little quote from this dude on LinkedIn is what's actually sparked this talk. Netflix has been bragging for years about how they only hire the top 10% of global talent. And this Coinbase dude was like, well, we only hire the top 0.1%. And I was just like, well, we only hire the 0.00. Like, come on, dudes. And if you're bragging about that, are you paying them in the top 0.1% of salaries? I don't think so. It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. Come on. And I find it to be very off-putting. I find this language of top 1%, I find it very off-putting and alienating. Anyway, maybe not everyone does, but that's why I wrote this talk. A lot of people like to brag about this stuff, and all I have to say is, if you're bragging about it, I hope you pay your people that well. Click, click, click. There we go. But let's talk about this word for a minute, normal. It's kind of a loaded word, and none of us are. I identify as very neurodiverse. I think a lot of people in tech are. And so the word normal doesn't get thrown around a whole lot because it's seen as somewhat insulting and somewhat exclusive. And maybe I shouldn't have picked that word. But I really do feel like a lot of us technical folks, we get really attached to our identities as the smart kids, right? When we were young and in school. And the software industry tends to reflect and reinforce this preoccupation at every turn. And I would kind of like us to challenge us to just set that baggage aside and think about ourselves as normal people. Because it can be humbling to think of ourselves as normal people, but most of us are, in fact, relatively normal people with many years of highly specialized training and experience, right? Even those of us who are certified geniuses in some axes are, we still go to the bathroom like everyone else. We still eat and drink and, and I feel like normal, I don't think that it should be an insulting, I should have been clicking as I was talking, shouldn't I? We are all more normal than we are not. And the reason that I like to use this term is because I feel like it reminds us that nobody is born a great engineer. Nobody. Great engineers are forged over years and years of practice, of trying things, of building things, of failing, having different experiences. Even your best world-class 10x engineers spent a solid decade or so learning their tools, trying things. I just don't think there's a lot more we can get out of treating ourselves like a super specialized class of people compared to the value that we can get from thinking ourselves collectively as pretty normal people who have practiced a fairly niche craft for a very long time. Great engineers are made, not born. I'm having those made into stickers, but the stickers didn't come in time for me to bring them, sadly. So, how do you do this? How do we turn normal engineers into world-class engineering teams? I think, honestly, none of this is going to be terribly surprising. But you start by realigning the way you think, away from the super individualist focus of thinking about hiring the best of the best and towards composing teams. Composing teams that work well together is an under-discussed skill. But this is how I would like to put it. How do you craft the systems that consistently turn normal engineers and engineering teams into world-class business results? Now we're getting somewhere. Software engineering is about solving business problems using technology, right? Which is why I don't think that the AI era should be too threatening to anyone here. A lot of people are like, am I still going to have a job? Dude, if we're still trying to solve problems with technology, yes, you will still have jobs because we're just going to more money, more problems. Is that how more techno, more problems? I think is how I would say it. And the thing that really matters when it comes to engineering productivity is not how many lines of code we write. It's whether or not we're moving the business forward, or if you work in a scientific research lab, the science forward, right? Which means that the only measure of productivity that truly matters is business impact. Now, this is easy to say, hard to do. That's not what this talk is about. So the number one productivity question is always, are we working on the right thing? Alignment is the job of technical leadership. It doesn't actually matter how fast you're outputting code if you aren't going in the right direction. Can people make decisions independently, transparently? Do people understand what's going on in the business? Do managers see their job as a shit umbrella or keeping information for people, or do they see their job as facilitating the flow of information to people who want it and need it? And this often gets skipped when we're in our rush to measure things like cycle time, code review, turnaround time, et cetera. But it starts with alignment. You can't wall teams off from the why. Any manager who sees their role as shit umbrella is a liability, in my view. I know some people do this with the best of intentions, but if your company is so abusive and toxic that you literally have to protect your team from management, then maybe they don't deserve your labor. You can't wall teams off from the why. I think you have to commit to transparency, hard conversations, saying no, hearing no, clear as kind, right? Your managers are there to connect you, not to protect you. If engineers are the innovation engines of our companies, if every company is a tech company, that means that they're not task takers, they're not ticket monkeys, right? They need to understand what the business is trying to achieve, and they'll do a better job. So I think building a world-class team starts here, with seeing the job of management as empowering, as connecting, and with seeing engineers as the people who are creating the value need to understand what you're trying to do. Invest in organizations. Again, I should be clicking instead of talking. And when it comes to hiring practices, I think it's a mistake to get super hung up on hiring the best people. Hire the right people, right? It's a subtle shift. But I think that when we try to sort people from best to worst, I think we get all tripped up on things that are easy to perform that are not actually, they don't actually contribute to great teams, right? So some of the best, most powerful engineering contributors I've ever seen have been the ones who are not writing lots of lines of code per day, but they're the ones who are training people. They're the ones who are making sure that we're all on the same page. They're the ones that are catching big problems before they get shipped. They're the ones who are investing into toolsmithing. There are so many, once you get past the senior level, up into staff level, there are so many different ways to be incredible and amazing. And there's no one way to be amazing, but there is a question of what do you need, right? If you already have a bunch of people on your team who can write lots of code really fast, then the right person for you is not another one of those people. It's a different archetype, right? There's no such thing as best any more than there are 10x engineers. I think it's a competitive advantage if you can build an environment where people can be hired for their unique strengths, not their lack of weaknesses, where the emphasis is on composing teams. This is the kind of place, too, that good engineers and good humans tend to be drawn to, just like a moth to a flame. It feels good to ship. It feels good to solve problems. It feels good to move fast. It feels good to support each other. It feels good to be in an on-call rotation where people are volunteering to take over for each other because they've had a rough night or because they want to go to a movie, right? Some of the teams that I've been on that have had the tightest cultural cohesion have been the SRE teams because they're always the one, they're the debuggers of last resort, right? It's kind of a stressful role, but you're there for each other, right? It's a band of brothers effect. Like I said, Christine and I, when we started Honeycomb, we had just come out of Facebook. Christine had been at Google. We knew a lot of folks who were, world-class engineers. And instead, we went out and we hired folks from hack academies, folks who had less starry backgrounds. And today, every single one of them could walk out the door and go get a job at Netflix or Google or wherever. But they don't. I think great engineers really get a lot out of paying it forward, sticking around. Anyway, getting distracted. In order to be able to hire the right people instead of the quote-unquote best people, you need to know what excellence means for your organization. And this means engineers, you need to know your business, right? You need to know your business and craft a talent strategy that helps it succeed. One axis here is time horizon. If you're building a team with a 6-month time horizon because you're running out of money and you don't know if you're going to be able to raise or not, that's a very different team to craft than if you're crafting a team with a 10-year horizon because you've got gajillions of dollars, right? There are plenty of Google principal engineers who didn't successfully make the jump to startups because the rhythms are so different. The definition of good and great is so different. So start with look at the great engineers that you have now. What makes them great? What makes them succeed in their roles? How difficult, scarce, hard to learn are the technical skills that you need in this role? How much support or training do they need? How long of a time horizon are you planning out? What's your risk tolerance? Because you can't cargo cult excellence any more than you can cargo cult any other company's value or culture. You can't be all things to all people, and you shouldn't try. The more you're able to draw from a wide bench of talent and develop skills and talent internally, the more of a competitive advantage it can be. I think we often make the mistake of thinking that everyone wants what we want, but some people want to work on database internals 60 hours a week. Some people want to work 30 hours a week, Knowing what works for you at your company will help you find the people that will do great for you. That last point is, I feel like I realized this a while ago when I realized that there are lots of people that I have worked with that I think are amazing, that I would wholeheartedly recommend to work at certain other companies, but I wouldn't hire them for Honeycomb because we have a specific definition of success, and I don't think they would be happy there. So it's a test. Build sociotechnical systems for software delivery with normal people in mind. When your systems are designed to be used by normal engineers, all that extra brilliance and energy can get poured into the product itself instead of wasting it on navigating the system. Again, normal people have cognitive biases. We have confirmation bias, recency bias, hindsight bias. We work hard, we care, we do our best, but we also forget things. We're less sharp at 2 a.m. than we are at 2 p.m. So our tools should reflect that. So I've got a list, both the technical list and the social list for how we build socio-technical systems for software delivery, with normal people in mind. And it starts with shrink the interval between when you're writing the code and when that code is in production. Make it as short as possible. For those of you who are in this room just listening to Bjorn Strustrup, the guy who invented C++, however you say his name, he said, I was writing down, he said something like, yes, he said, feedback loops are what make us engineers, right? You write some code, you see how it went, you see where you messed up, and you do it again, and you do it better the next time. And that, yes, feedback loops are what make us engineers, right? And keeping that deploy interval as short as possible is so fundamental. Make it easy to do the right thing, hard to do the wrong thing. The fastest way to ship a line of code should also be the easiest. In a lot of ways, this is what the entire platform engineering movement is about, right? It's about treating software engineers like human beings instead of, oh, well, we're engineers, so we want to memorize all the different command line hooks for Vim versus Emacs. And maybe we do, but we should stop treating ourselves like these special beasts who want to memorize everything. And because in any system, the most important resource is the one that is most constrained. And in our socio-technical systems, that constrained resource is this. It's cognitive load for engineers who are trying to write code and move the business forward. Number 3, every engineer should be able to deploy and figure out if their software worked as intended or not, and roll back if not, or roll forward. We should invest in observability and sense-making tools. Observability is the sense-making apparatus of complex socio-technical systems. And the key to high-performing engineering orgs is all about fast feedback loops, which is about moving swiftly with confidence. And you can't move swiftly if you don't have confidence. And the confidence comes from having the tooling to see if your code is behaving as you expect it to, or if not, why not? Like if you could boil this whole sermon down to just like that, right? Fast feedback loops and observability. And invest in your internal tooling and enablement. It's only production is production. We all have a limited number of developer cycles, right? And way too many of us to this day put too many of our cycles towards trying to make sure nothing will break in production, instead of investing towards making sure that we can find things in production that have broken or that are not going the way we want them to, and tweaking them and understanding them there. All right, that's the technical list. The social list. Build a welcoming culture. People do their best work when they feel like they belong. Growth is the norm. Growth is the baseline. Instill a growth mindset into your culture. Make it safe to fail. Make it okay to fail. I don't know if y'all remember, let's see, Etsy had the three-armed sweater award that they give out whenever someone deployed something especially heinous to production. It was this three-armed sweater. It was grotesque. It was fun. At Linden Lab, we had Shrek ears if you broke something. And these little awards have sort of fallen out of favor in modern times. We were like, oh, don't pick on people because they broke. But at the time, I think it wasn't like a dunce cap. It was an opportunity to tell the story of, yeah, I destroyed production. Because what we would tell people was, if you're not breaking things, it means you're not trying hard enough. You're not moving fast enough. You're not trying hard enough. And this is an opportunity for us to spread the stories so that we don't repeat our mistakes, right? Have a sense of humor about it. Don't punish people. Make it okay, because we all fail. Make sure leaders admit their mistakes first. Diverse teams are resilient teams. Um, and this is another thing Struship just said, that a monoculture is not good for engineering. I was taking notes so fast. I was like, oh my God, meet your idols, and they say all the things that you always hoped that they would. Super cool. Monocultures, if you've got a group of guys who have known each other since college, they can move really fast, but they get derailed really fast if there's a different kind of challenge, or someone gets sick, someone gets pregnant, something happens. Diverse teams are resilient teams, and so if you're a leader who's looking at composing groups of high-performing teams, look at what axes of diversity each person you're hiring brings. And it's not about trying to hire the perfect rainbow, Benetton ad of folks, but, do you have young folks and older folks? Do you have parents on your team? Do you have people from different backgrounds? Do you have people who know databases? Do you have people who know front-end stuff? When you add axes of diversity, you're more resilient. And this is kind of one more way of saying that, but I feel so bad for junior engineers these days. I will never miss an opportunity to put out a plug. Assemble your engineering teams from a range of levels. There's this sort of misguided belief out there that when you're hiring engineers, you should always try to hire the most senior group of people you can get for the least money. And this is just not actually a recipe for success. You want to have a range of levels because you want everyone on your team to be pushing themselves, growing, learning, teaching, right? If you have a bunch of staff engineers, principal engineers who have done it all before, someone needs to do a web form, everyone there has done it 30, 50, 100 times. They're bored, they're on autopilot, they're not growing, they're not learning, they're not pushing themselves, they're not teaching. That's not excellence. It's not speed, it's not success. Junior engineers will continually ask the best questions. They will test your documentation. They will test your culture. They're so goddamn happy to be there too. Just can't say it enough. The work that we put into making our systems discoverable, resilient, humane, it gets used over and over and over. The work that you put into making it easy for junior engineers to grow up, that's the same work that's going to make it easy for new hires to onboard. It's the same work that's going to make it so that you can find the docs at 2 a.m. when you're getting called because your shit's on fire. Nobody else can figure it out, right? That work gets reused over and over and over again. And by the way, I am not saying that excellence does not matter. None of this is about, just hire, mediocre people who don't give a shit. Oh, just, manage the lowest don't hold people too high. That is not what I am saying. I think everyone should have very high standards. I think that we should hire the right people who want to be here, right? People who want to be working on this. People who this is the right job for them, where they are on fire, where they are growing, where they are learning, where they are excited to be here every day. I think we should manage underperformance out. I'm just saying that this is my version. This is how we build those systems. This is what I've seen over and over again in my career. This is how you build high-performing teams with great world-class engineers. This is how we build world-class engineers. Well, that's repeating itself. I'm saying that your organization is a system. The system is what the system does. Who do people become in the time that they spend on your team? Talent is as common as dirt. I don't remember who said that, but I love that. The potential for excellence is everywhere. If you can build an org that values continuous learning and development, curiosity and experimentation, and invest in people, be the kind of place that builds the next generation of world-class engineers, then you usually end up being the kind of company that they don't want to leave. That's all.